Welcome to One Shots Tavern. Today we are doing a little bit of a different thing. We are going over some of our favorite tools to use both as DMs and as players in the Ttrpg space. Today, if you are listening over audio, you will still probably get a lot out of this. So I'm not trying to scare you off, but if you would like, we are going to be incorporating a bit of visuals and clicking through some links and websites that we are using for some of these tools. A lot of them are online tools. If you feel like you're missing out on visuals, hop over to YouTube and you'll get the full experience that way. Otherwise, I just want to jump into this from my perspective as, I guess, the more senior GM. Not that matters at all, but the amount of tools available today, DJ, compared to when I started is like not infuriating, but like it is so frustrating.
Do you remember when playing 3.5 and when playing Pathfinder back in the day, me specifically asking, is there an app for that? Because I did. And there really wasn't. Like there was from Paizo. It was terrible. So you would hop on to your phone and you would like search in the app store like Pathfinder, and there was one and it was fine because like for me personally, I don't do so well with pen and paper. For pen and paper, it always ends up looking like this, and you can't really tell, but
for audio readers, for audio readers,
holding
it's chaos.
It's a horrifying
chicken
character
scratch
sheet that is water stained. I can't even read my own handwriting.
We both have terrible handwriting, so it's like it's always been a problem for me too, especially as a GM. I was not good at paper prep. I've tried it many times. Sometimes when I know a module really well and I know what I'm running for that session, I could run just with a notepad off to the side. But anytime that we used to play, DJ and I used to live close to each other and we did a lot of in-person games. Anytime I was running in-person games, because I was running music and I was running like expensive adventures, I was rarely without my laptop at least. So a lot of the tools that we're going to kind of jump around today, you probably have heard of some of them, but we just want to talk about the ones we like and that we've gotten a lot out of. Specifically over on YouTube, please drop some of your favorite tools in the description if you don't see them in this video. We want to check them out. We want to share them with other people.
Yeah, we'll probably do a part 2 GM tools in the future too, because it's evolving way more every day.
These hands down, as a GM, the single most effective tool that I have learned about and started using in the last year is Obsidian. If you're not familiar with this, I think this goes for players as well as GMs. Obsidian is a markdown language-based notation tool, which is a fancy way of saying it's really freaking simple, but it's very, very powerful. The weird thing, again, if you're looking on YouTube, this thing that you're looking at for DJ's game is, I think, your Exandria. Your whole huge campaign. Every single one of these points on this crazy web map that you see in front of you are different, essentially kind of Google Doc level sheets with information on them. And they all
interlink.
So the idea is when I start writing in a doc, if you can pull up just one doc that you don't mind pulling up. When I start typing, I can all of a sudden drop down some brackets and then put in like a proper noun or a god, or in this case, DJ, you can explain it.
Yes, let me throw some brackets around the word planet, because you might need to define the word planet in your game. And so I just put those brackets around there. And so I just step away from it there and bam, it's hyperlinked. The doc has not been created yet that it is hyperlinked to. So you don't have to worry about it. You can just go through, you can write as you're writing, throw in the brackets around the important things, and then go back to it later. So that's what I did here in this situation. I added all of the information that I needed. And then now I can go in and be like, I'm trying to click.
Well, to not go full tutorial, basically what it lets you do is it lets you more stream of consciousness keep working without feeling like when I used to do stuff in Google Docs, it was chaos. I either had one huge document that felt disorganized, out of order, like messy and bloated, or I had a million short documents. Because sometimes I just want to write Steve, the god of darkness. And that's all I know about Steve right now. Okay. Steve is just the god of darkness. So what I can do in Obsidian is I can write Steve in while I'm making him up, while I'm writing things about the lore and the universe, and I just throw some brackets around Steve, and I can come click on Steve later and define him better as the god of darkness.
For example, I mean, this is how I used to keep track of the notes on
your phone
in my world. It was in my notes tab, individual notes. And so like I was running sessions off of my phone essentially through that. Instead, now I've got Obsidian open and somebody can mention something and I go, oh, I know what folder that's in. Open up the folder. So let's say, oh, cool. We've got mechanization here. Oh, the gods. Okay, cool. I need one of those. Cool. There's my short brief description.
Right, about that god that isn't overly complex. And you can make it as big as you want. It could be a huge amount of lore for this god that you just wrote out. But then when you're in another tab and you happen to mention Anthura or Ethra or Adaran or whatever, like you can go, oh crap, who is that? And then you click into it or you hover over it and boom, you have access to all of the information that you put together about that. This isn't even getting into how complex and amazing you can make Obsidian. This is surface level. And that's as far as I want to go right now because I want you to try it. And it's so fun.
Just Obsidian. It's free. Definitely check it out. If you get really into it, there are Discords dedicated to all of the mods that you can add into Discord. It's beautiful.
And there are YouTube tutorials of how to build this out specifically that like reference GitHub links that pull in all the 5e rules or whatever. I've done my own version of that with doing stuff with Cypher where I've pulled in some of the rules from PDFs, a little bit more arduous, but there are ways to make this black screen that you see right now look like D&D Beyond does or parchment. And there's ways to make, I build out my GM screen in something called, what are they called? Canvases. Which lets me take each of these notes that are scrollable and pin them all over this board and be able to look at them and reference them at any point in time when I'm like running my session. So hands down, number one, if all you get from this as a GM or as a player that likes to ever take notes, because you should, check out Obsidian. It's incredible. It's gonna change how you think. It is designed from the designer's perspective. It is designed to work like your brain. That's all of these nodes that are connected. It's because you're writing and referencing the same things over and over again that need to be re-referenced, but you don't need to explain everything about the lore of a god every single time they're referenced, but you also don't want to forget it when you need to reference it. So check it out.
Remember that NPC Steven that you came up with and you needed to reference and remember what his name was because your players decided that they're in town and they want to check on him again?
Yep.
Fantastic. He's in the NPC tab right there. That's Obsidian.
And you can build it out however you want. The thing, and to bring up another tool that I'm sure people that are listening are familiar with or that I have no problem with, World Anvil. I don't know if you pulled that one up.
I don't. I can get it real quick.
But it works very similar to Obsidian. It's just a lot less customizable. What they do instead, because Obsidian is a blank slate, right? You are the world builder, but you're also the organizer of everything. World Anvil is a little bit more structured. I've used it before, but I felt a bit constrained by how it works. It's a similar structure where you're building out a Wikipedia for your universe that you're building, but it has prompts. It's like there's whole sections for magic items. There's whole sections for putting maps that have pins that are interactive. It has tons and tons of stuff that you can play with. So check that out too if you want a little bit more of a guided experience.
Yeah, World Anvil is great. Obsidian has a lot of those tools now built in that will pull from other places. So it's a little more decentralized. But yeah. And then if on that track as well, another one that I am a big fan of is going to be an Inkarnate. Inkarnate is where I typically build all of my maps. And so you could get as detailed or as undetailed as you want with Inkarnate. And so that was like how my world of Aderos began, because I wanted to make a map for a campaign that I was running for Andrew and a few of our other for the Sea of Sorrows. And I was like, oh, this is fun. All right, cool. I made that map. I was like, how detailed can I get with like my own thing? And I think it turned out pretty decent. But I've seen ones that blow mine away. So,
Yeah.
you know,
It's one of those things. A map gives players something. Don't get me wrong, there's actually downsides of using a map sometimes, but the map can become its own character in a campaign. In the game that DJ ran for Sea of Sorrows, we were in the craziness of the Shadow Realm, Ravenloft, and we knew where we were going. Even though it wasn't a hex crawl, if you're not familiar with that, that'd be where you took a map and you can overlay a hex on it, and you know exactly the like point coordinates that you are on it.
Longitude.
My gosh. And there's GMs that they will prep every single hex.
100%.
That's possible through Inkarnate, but it also can just be simple where you're like, okay, I understand more about this universe now because I know how it's laid out. Super cool tool. I found it a little clunky to play with. I just didn't honestly spend the time getting good at it, to be completely honest.
That's fair.
So it takes a little bit of time, but I highly recommend taking a look at that if you're in need of a map. And that's some of the GM prep stuff. Is there anything else like on the GM side that you find like invaluable for you without getting into the like in-person versus online stuff?
Yeah, so this is a new one for me, actually. Let's see if I can get Uncharted Journeys is something that I have started to use. This gets more into the supplement side of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas Wizards of the Coast, they do rely on their third-party creators to come up with these things. But Uncharted Journeys is absolutely wonderful if you are doing traveling sessions, because that is one of the worst parts of running a module or campaign is the travel sessions. Because
and it doesn't have to be.
It does not have to be, because they give you what, like 8 things usually to to roll on. But really, you got to choose from them because they tell you you're going to be traveling for 10, 15, 20 days.
We got to do an episode about travel. This would be a good one to talk about.
Yes, 100%. I agree.
have so much to say.
Because that's the thing, right? So what this supplement does is it gives you the tools down to what kind of like environment are they in? Are they in the haunted lands? Are they in the hells? It gives you so much, and then it gives you pages of random encounters that you can come across. Supplements are a big one for me. Let's see, I can't find white mouse on white background.
Right.
Which brings me to, like how I said, Wizards of the Coast often relies on their third parties to come up with their supplements.
Which
there is one company
is lazy and not wrong. There's a lot of spaces where even as a designer and a GM, it's like, I'm going to build this stuff. And if you're going to play with it and you're interested in overland travel being important to your game, you may need to build other stuff. Like, that's okay. Yeah. It's also a little lazy when you build, I don't know, a whole adventure around pirate ships and then don't really give you very good ship combat. What? Who said that?
So what is it? Saltmarsh?
Yeah. So it's like that is a downside of a lot of the stuff that Wizards will put out, but there's so much in the third party world that helps solve those problems, and I'm excited to check out that supplement specifically. Oh, I see where you're going.
It is so good. So yeah, seg 2. So there are different ways that different publishers handle this and handle optional rules. For example, we all know that Dungeons and Dragons is a fantasy setting, and it does that pretty well. People definitely want to make 5th edition other things, and they have tried. There are a ton, and some of them are decently successful. However, Monty Cook Games is basically in the business of, here's a blank rule set. We're going to make a supplement to help you with that. And so for this one, Stay Alive, it just has awesome survival horror stuff.
So it's the
Stars Are Fire
cipher
is another one that I
system,
have.
and it is
Yeah.
additional rules for the cipher system to make it work for a horror
Exactly.
tone and theme.
It's not necessarily a setting. They do give you 3 or 4 adventures in the back. But what it is instead is, hey, here are some optional rules that you can use that are going to work well with our system. Stars Are Fire, that's their space and cyberpunk and all of that one. Stay Alive, zombies and vampires and werewolves, oh my.
And then there's the Rust one that's coming out.
There's Rust and Redemption. That's the one I'm the most excited about because it's post-apocalypse and it just sounds fun, Mad Maxy. And We Are All Mad Down Here, which is like Alice in Wonderland and like
super weird fantasy fairy tale.
Your public domain fairy tale stories. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like the
what do you
upon
have
a
next,
time.
Andrew?
Okay, so the thing that I want to jump to is something I wholeheartedly miss, and I'm excited to get back to having them more, and that is in-person games.
Yes.
So something about in-person games that was so special to me as an artist, not just a GM, was being able to find ways to create an immersive experience. You'll hear me say that a million times. I always care about making an immersive experience. So does every GM. But my favorite ways to do that, and DJ didn't even get the chance to experience some of this, but that was through lighting, sound, and props, as well as the normal stuff of miniatures and maps and terrain. So you can probably pick up on it pretty quick, but I have access to a 3D printer. And so I've made all kinds of weird stuff over the years. This is not going to go full show and tell, but I've made and kit bashed together all sorts of like little microchips and mega corporation logos, and I've bought stuff at the Dollar Tree and ripped it apart and spray painted it and made stickers and caution symbols and stuff to make these weird props that lets my players feel more connected. And so what my favorite moment was, because of props, was in one of my home games about a year and a half ago, and 2 players both pulled guns on each other, and then a third player pulled a gun in. It was full on like the meme level moment of the what you say, right? Like where they're like all holding guns on each other and yelling at each other, but they weren't just using finger gun. I'm gonna keep my prop off mostly. Just like it's 3D printed. I have the privilege of having a 3D printer. It's not an expensive one. I learned how to use it. It was a pain in the butt, but throwing myself into that hobby allowed me to make some really cool things that changed how my table felt. Not just forcing them to only imagine things. Some people have a hard time with the theater of the mind side that I actually often prefer. What I was able to do was start putting things in front of my players, and they were able to interact with it. I remember what you were going to say. You were saying something about the mind's eye thing. The whole point is it's giving somebody something that it's giving them the connection to the table. It's connection to the world. And it's not just forcing them to stay in their head, but to realize the benefit of playing in-person games of there are humans in front of me that I'm pretending are something else. And it gives a little bit more believability. I've never been at a table that has cosplay at it. I would love that. That would be so cool.
I would eat it up so fast.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Obviously, there's a lot more we can talk about, but basically the short version is try out props. If you're running in-person games, learn how to make aged paper maps. You print off it, you figure it out. Like it is not as inaccessible as it feels. Don't call yourself not an artist. Just try it out. Make some cool things. Make a puzzle for your next game.
Yep. And game masters, the props aren't just for the players.
Nope.
And maybe they don't see the props, but there are so many supplemental like physical things that will help you out that people just produce and they sell for too little money. For example, like this is a monster deck for a system. And so it has the different like monsters and their stat blocks. Or are you having a hard time with NPCs? Here we go. Let me grab one. Oh, Henry Kolb. He's got a dapper appearance. He's got a misanthropic demeanor. Kind of ill-tempered, though. And it tells me what his modifications are. Like,
awesome.
that sort of thing can help the role play and the session continue without that awkward pause of, I didn't have that prepped, so now I have to think about it.
Yep. Which, like, GMs get better at that over time, but really all they're doing is hiding their sneaky little tools. Like, that's I remember how often I would use name generators. I'm sure listeners have, while making any number of characters, have been to like fantasynamegenerator.com. They're fine. They're perfectly fine. I still use them on occasion. They're not bad resources to play around with, but anything that can lower the barrier of, I need a thing at my fingertips right now, please. That's really what you need. And I've taken stuff from those and made my own name generators, for, like using Google Sheets and stuff.
Yeah.
All that's totally free.
Right.
I bring that because like I'm showing off props and DJ's got a deck. And look, we're not here shilling products. We're just saying there's so many cool things available.
There's so many things.
But also there's a lot that's free. And a lot of it's going to be online.
John is one of the most popular fantasy generators out there. I use it probably every time somebody says, hey, can I see if I can buy some things? It, like, for example, their shop generator, you say exactly how large the town is. It gives you a random list. It gives you the name of the place. And every time, okay, now, and then you refresh it. It should give Vincent's Wondrous Armaments. It does the work for you.
There you
go. It's great. It's supplemental. It's free.
It sucks populating a shop's inventory.
100%.
And it's actually what I usually do is I usually don't have a shop's inventory depending on the system I'm running. And I'm like, look, players, what do you want? Let's just be real. What kind of thing are you looking for if you don't know what you want? You know, are you trying to solve a problem? Are you trying to become more powerful? That's usually what I'm trying to help guide them towards, something maybe I'm already aware of. But also, I cannot tell you how much random tables and generated inventories has caused utmost amazing, unexpected chaos in my games, and I love it. You'll surprise, we like Cypher. So Monte Cook Games Cypher system, they have incredible options for the ciphers in the game. They're the one-off magic items. They use them once and then they're gone. So it helps balance the amount of power that they might bring to the table. But that thing that they just rolled on a random chart that gives them the ability to nuke a room will make a session like 100%. Incredible. And
it just adds that flavor all of a sudden where it's just, okay, cool. So I have something for this. It might be a little chaotic. But I'm going to pull this man out of phase with reality for the next hour. And we're going to run.
Yep, for sure. And then the other big thing in person is miniatures and painting terrain and stuff. I don't need to get into that too much, but if you haven't tried it, you're likely on YouTube right now or have been on YouTube. Yeah, look, DJ's got a freaking Kraken Eldritch Horror dude.
Painted that.
And he painted it. And it's like a DJ, this is not a dig, would not be normally a person that's like, I paint, and I'm an annoying artist type, right? People always go, I could never paint minis like you, Andrew. I'm like, shut up. Yes, you can. I know people that are not artistic at all that have done incredible miniatures because it is about learning processes. Yeah.
I am so impatient. And so I was definitely one of those guys that was like, I don't know if I can do this. But like, here's the thing. Even if you're running in person or if you're running online, I know game masters who will print and paint the minis for their characters regardless and make sure that their players have it. Because
a tool that
it's a connection.
A tool we can not go full demo on because it'll become the whole episode is Hero Forge. You're likely aware of it. It is like a video game style character builder that lets you build out a 3D model that you can either order to have shipped to 3D printed and shipped to you. Yeah, look at this little gnome dude that DJ put together. You can also, segueing to our next subject, which is online play, you can also get access to the 3D model, not for
Yes.
in-person play, but you can also use it on a VTT, which is a virtual tabletop. And there's a lot of ways to import them into the different platforms.
Yeah.
Yep. It is a phenomenal platform to build things out. You can get a digital token, not even the 3D model, just if you want artwork of your character. Before the shift towards so much accessible AI artwork, people that didn't have the money to commission portraits would often build their character out inside of Hero Forge and just finally visualize their character for the first time. And it's a great platform.
More along the lines of Hero Forge and using it with a VTT. I ran a Curse of Strahd campaign, and oops, let's get right in his face. So here's the mini that I created for Curse of Strahd, and then here's a map that someone else created of Yester Hill.
Big
Tailspire's
old
become
nasty
one
tree.
of my absolute favorite virtual tabletops because of this. It's not the only one, though. There are so many virtual tabletops, and many of them will work with Hero Forge. For example, there was another one that I was playing around with. I'm not going to show it, but Dungeon Alchemist. It's a minorly AI generative map maker, and you can import your Hero Forge minis into that as well, which is super awesome. It works great right now for fantasy, because that's what it's geared for. Hopefully they add modern assets, because I'm a modern girly, but
yeah. And so VTTs in general would be an easy segue. So Tailspire is the one we're most familiar with that is full 3D. That, as well as Roll20, which I've been playing with for a decade. This solves for a couple things. I run Roll20 because it is extremely simple. It can be very complex. They can have dynamic lighting where you're doing a dungeon crawl and looking around corners, and you can see the field of view of characters, fog of war, all that kind of stuff. I've done that. But I am, between DJ and I, not that we either of us dislike the other option, but I'm more inclined to run Theater of the Mind without any grid in front of you if I'm running things online.
I'm more
and
likely
often
to
in
run
person.
something big and three-dimensional.
Yep. Whereas like in person, I would build huge involved battle maps for every single game that we ran. I would paint and print every mini and every baddie as accurately as possible to the story I was telling when I was doing stuff in person. That's
In person, I have a battle grid.
Yeah. So like so that being said, when I use Roll20 for my games, it's because mainly it gives me access to everybody's character sheet. It gives me a whiteboard at the drop of a hat if I need to lay things out in a more tactical, position-based kind of scene. But it also gives me like a screen for players to look at, to throw up artwork, to move around tokens. And when I do Theater of the Mind, I do what I like to call like zone-based combat, where like I will put minis or tokens on the board that represent the players and the enemies, as well as like maybe certain locations. But generally, movement doesn't matter very much in terms of like proximity on the board. It's more just to keep things organized for myself.
Right.
Because running
a general
true,
area.
Yeah, running true Theater of the Mind where you're just remembering where everything is in a combat scenario is a nightmare. Because the one player will be like, hey, actually, I told you that I was behind the goblin. And it's like, oh, crap. Okay, so then this other person's turn that we just fully described for the last 15 minutes is moot, right? That's not helpful. So I like Roll20 for that. I also really like it because it is, as far as I know, please comments tell me I'm wrong, the only way to, not the only, one of the best ways to do character sheets for Cypher that also kind of leads people through the process of how the game of Cypher works. And Roll20 is system agnostic in a lot of ways, where you can run a game using just dice and stuff, but you can also purchase different products like you can on other platforms to support the different systems. That being said, I don't run any paid Cypher assets in my games. So you can use character sheets and you can input everything just like you would in like an active PDF. And you can still do all of the roles using the abilities and
Yeah.
all of the features of the Cypher system within Roll20. And it's helped me teach Cypher a lot easier than asking people online to have a piece of paper character sheet in front of them. That's never fun.
Yeah. Roll20 is the best place that I have found so far to have a really simplified Cypher sheet. Foundry does have plugins and stuff. We can get into Foundry a little bit. I don't have anything to show for Foundry because it takes a lot. It's a lot of setup for that first setup, but it is the most customizable in that you can build it for whatever system you want and you can make it do just about anything you want. You pay for some server space or you set up your own server. It has great music plugins, character sheet plugins for Cypher, for Vampire the Masquerade, whatever you want to run it for. It works really well. And then if you
can
want
also play like board games on there too.
You can play board games on it. It's cool. It is really cool.
It's also been around for a long time, which is
that's
twofold.
True.
Okay,
yes.
One, it is
a lot
clunky.
Of development.
It is clunky, but also until like last year, it pretty much felt, I'm sure they did. If there's a developer in here, I'm really sorry. It felt like the same platform that I had been on for 9 years in bad ways. Like it looked the same, it was old, and it just didn't work very well. Now there's new icons in dark mode and things are a little more organized and there's built-in audio.
Significantly better experience now.
Yeah, for sure. But it's still clunky and you'll figure out what you like in it. And that's the other thing that I want people to be aware of is I'm leaning towards free stuff as much as possible when it comes to these platforms because a lot of these become a huge investment. Foundry, from what I understand, has the ability to do character sheet stuff, but you got to purchase the content just like you would through D&D Beyond, and you're buying a digital license that you really don't own at the end of the day. So there are certain, I don't know if you want to call them moral quandaries, but there's qualms people might have with doing that. I personally have not invested into Foundry because when I was running a lot of 5e, I was heavily invested into D&D Beyond.
Is now a way to use your D&D Beyond stuff in Foundry, actually.
Cool.
And so you can, so essentially it's just a little tool that will copy your character sheet over from D&D Beyond over to Foundry. And it does it really well. But onto another VTT that is more for the people who want to run Theater of the Mind stuff is Alchemy. Alchemy is here not solely. They have added maps and stuff to Alchemy in recent months, but one of the places where it excels is these backdrops that kind of give you a nice little feel.
It's like a motion desktop background thing that sets tone. Like art helps to set tone really well, and when there's a little bit of movement, you're just turning up that immersion.
Yep, exactly. And it helps keep people from wandering off is the big. So we talked about D&D Beyond. Everybody knows D&D Beyond. There's really not a whole lot of reason to talk about it because almost everybody has had some experience with it. If you haven't,
it is a marketplace for D&D 5th edition digital character sheet creation, and they're adding a lot in the world of VTTs. I like to touch on that. It's like I'm excited to see what they do. I'm just less invested in Wizards of the Coast these days because of issues I've had with them more as a company. That's not to say there's anything wrong with you playing D&D.
Still will always love Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
Oh, yeah.
That's not what this podcast is about.
No, it's not. It occasionally will be. There's an alternative. I've always wanted the quality that was D&D Beyond elsewhere. And it just didn't exist in a way that it felt worth it. I was aware of Demiplane a couple years ago, back when Pathfinder 2 was coming out. At the time, wasn't a big fan.
That was like a year ago, by the way.
No, that was 2 years ago.
They still
'Cause it
haven't
was-
released their Pathfinder tools yet. They announced it back then.
I
They were
demoed
doing
it,
some beta.
whatever. But
They have, sorry, now it's
yeah, so they
Starfinder
demoed
2.
it at Gen Con 2019.
Yeah, it was the year before we went.
No,
Or
that was 5 years ago. What am I
Yeah,
talking
it's the same
about?
thing.
I don't know. I'm crazy. Regardless, Demiplane is a great new option for
Yes, it
a
is.
a D20 D&D Beyond digital character sheet that also incorporates having like rolls and like digital dice and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So here's Candela Obscura, a character sheet for that, for example. But that's not all they have. They have, so we can hop over to their other games. They got Pathfinder 2E, Avatar Legends, Vampire the Masquerade. So we can click into that because I do have actually a character on here. Of course I do. And so it's just, oh, cool. Here's all of my characters for all of my different games. Cool. We've got my super edgelord, Victor Frost.
Required to be edgelord.
Former professor. And
oh, yeah.
it's great.
We got to try this out. At least I mainly got to try out this version of Demiplane with Candela Obscura in a recent episode. Our friend of the podcast, Danil, is a GM over on Start Playing Games. He ran Candela for us. You can actually watch the whole playthrough over on our Patreon. Yep. $5 gets you access to all the full playthroughs of the games that we do. And I really got to play around with this for the first time. Not only was I playing around with Candela for the first time, but I was playing around with Demiplane. And it's a digital character sheet is good at getting rules out of the way. I do often miss having paper sheets because there was something nice about not having tech in front of everybody. But really, at the end of the day, for accessibility reasons, it is so much a superior experience to be able to have a character sheet lead you through the process of how rolls work, how scars work in Candela and Forged in the Dark kind of games. Like it's spelled out for you, and it helps you along the way rather than just saying, yeah, it's somewhere on your paper character sheet. Go ahead and fill it out.
Yeah. Yep. It helps me significantly to learn systems as well. It's been a while since I've done anything with Pathfinder, right?
Yeah.
So me going through and building a Pathfinder 2 character, I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. But guess what? It didn't matter that I didn't know what I was doing. It walked me through it. And that is exactly what I want out of one of these tools. And they're adding new games all the time to Demiplane. Yep. I'm hoping that essentially they just become the, hey,
open marketplace.
Everything else, here it goes. So, yeah.
And it's interesting. I know DJ brought this up to me recently. It's like, it's interesting to see for the first time in a very long time, D&D Beyond is finally putting third-party content on their website. It's all still 5th edition D&D, but it's they recently did a partnership with the Dungeon Dude, another awesome podcast on YouTube. They published a big Kickstarter that was called Dungeons of Drakkenheim. Very cool content. Their stuff's on D&D Beyond, and it's like the first time that's happened since they like had a failed partnership with Riot. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
That was weird.
It didn't last very long, and
they took all the content down.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they did stuff with Darrington Press. They've done, what's the other ones that they've done?
It's
done
very limited.
But it seems that essentially, if it's going to be added to the Demiplane 5th edition, that it's probably going to end up on D&D Beyond as well, is what it appears to be.
Which is fine.
Competition is good.
That's kind of why we wanted to do this episode is there are so many options, and we're not trying to highlight ones that we think you need to be using, but we want to show you that there are options that like you don't need to make everything up. You don't need to find it all yourself. Right. And it's, again, I kind of brought up accessibility a second ago, but there's a lot of barriers to getting into TTRPGs, and to put a bookend on looking through these tools, we could do this all day, right? And we will probably do more, and we want to see what tools you guys are doing and using. But the reality is I care about making it possible for as many people that play with me and that listen to this podcast feel like they can play the game that I love. And when I say the game, I don't mean D&D, I don't mean Cypher,
Whatever game.
TTRPGs.
Yeah, exactly.
I want people to play because it has changed my life. And it has made it deeply fulfilling to be able to participate in TTRPGs with my friends. So when these tools can get shit out of the way of you feeling like you can't do it, I can't visualize my character. Okay, let's look at some art tools that we could maybe build one out for you. I don't know how to build a character. Okay, cool. We have a digital character sheet that walks you through it step by step. Maybe you're not, because you're not an auditory processor, where if I'm spewing how to make a character at you, you're just getting overwhelmed. Here's a VTT that shows you the battle map. It's 3D. You can move the camera around. You can figure out the angles that you want to try and navigate this scenario to do something cool. It's about accessibility. It's about making this game playable and immersive for more people.
And it doesn't matter how you play or who you play with. All that matters is that you play, because life is better when we're playing games together.
For sure. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Hi, Editing Andrew here. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode on tools for Dungeon Masters and players alike. We want to invite you to check out our Kickstarters, both Pink Security More and Battle School, over on Kickstarter right now, funding through the end of February. We have both hit our goals and we are in the stretch goals territory, trying to make these projects as good as they possibly can be. Thank you all for the support that you've given us so far. It has meant the world to us to make these dreams a reality and getting into self-publishing. If you are not already, please follow us over across all social media. We are One Shots Tavern. You can find us over on TikTok. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you would, just leave us a review, whether it's a comment on YouTube or a review on Apple Podcasts. That kind of stuff really boosts our ability to get out there and be seen by people, as well as we do want to genuinely talk to our audience and learn how we can be better at what we're doing. We're always trying new games and we're learning from them to become better storytellers and players at the table. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next time on One Shots Tavern.